Ladies and gentlemen, part 2.
Welcome to Functional Philosophy. I'm Charles Tew. That's T as in tango, E as in echo, and W as in whiskey. This is episode number 6, and its title is Taffer's Delight. You're about to listen to part 2 of my conversation with Ken Levine. I assume you've listened to part 1, so no contextualizing. Just enjoy. There's a tendency for people to think of morality as synonymous with altruism. People don't really see a purpose for the category of morality because it only has one content, and that's altruism as far as they can tell. Now, Ayn Rand herself spoke in moral, even strident terms, and yet people still write that element of hers off as non-essential or maybe some kind of rationalization because even she can't escape morality. Now, this is actually the view I got from BioShock. Near the beginning, Andrew Ryan has that line about the bonds of petty morality. So, what were your thoughts in that? Did you regard her as basically amoral, and yeah, she uses moral terms, but she's not really interested in it, or did you regard her as having a different kind of morality?
Remember that Andrew Ryan is not Ayn Rand. Andrew Ryan is somebody. He's obviously deeply connected, right? Mm-hmm. But I wasn't like going back to my copies of Rand to make sure everything Rand was saying was completely in line with Rand because I was building a character.
I mean, you could have surprised me because if you did this by memory or something, that's pretty good because there's
the most useful source was a book called Ayn Rand Speaks, and it was and it's basically a bunch of interviews and stuff she did. Yeah. And great thing about Rand is she spoke like a character. You know, like she was quite articulate and she was so confident in her pronouncements that she was quotable. And her voice, really helped me with figuring out the voice for Ryan because he had the same kind of confidence in his belief system where I sort of stammer and stutter around. I wouldn't be a very good voice actor for Andrew Ryan. A man has I think he's got kind of a choice. But I think I looked at it when I started, and I'd go back to it even more not for the words so much as for her pacing, of how she spoke, and I don't mean verbally. I don't really listen to tapes. Like how she spoke on the page, and because getting his rhythm right, there's a lot of common between the rhythms, just as writers or speakers, or how they form sentences, but less than the specifics of the philosophy. But I think I got it. I read Not in the Head, and I read that book, and I read Anthem, and I read half of Atlas Shrugs. Believe it or not.
Was it too long?
No, it was a bit repetitious. I thought I completely understood what she was saying. It was really, obviously, I thought it was interesting because the whole concept of rapture is in some ways is a type of.
I read Atlas Shrugged in less than a month. I don't remember how much less, but I remember. I think I started it on the 5th and I finished it on the 28th, if I remember right. And I read it dang quick, the whole thing. I couldn't make it through the Fountainhead. I read to page 116 or something like this and put it to the side, and I had to go back to it several years later.
Galt's Gulch.
Right.
But I also took it from, you ever read The Mosquito Coast?
No.
It's about a guy who forms, he leaves America because he says, capitalism is destroying the world. It's sort of the opposite, right? Mm. And English corporate culture is destroying the world, and there's going to be a nuclear war. And he brings his family, and he's a genius, this guy. He brings his family to the Amazon, and he builds a new society there. Very, not in a scale of rapture, like a village basically. Right. And he's got all these inventions about how to make ice. He has an idea of how to make ice in the jungle, and he does it like some chemical process. And then, of course, very much like BioShock, being right becomes more important to him than being thinking he's right. Being more important than what happened to the people around him, and it kind of falls apart. So that had a lot of inspiration on BioShock too.
Seeing that he's right became more important than the people around him. Could we see a dichotomy there?
That was like a commie dude, right? So I'm an equal opportunity dystopia guy.
Absolutely. I took. I mean, Bioshock features some of Ayn Rand's ideas, but I don't think it's about objectivism. It's about. Let me put it this way. I identify the theme of Bioshock 1 as the danger of certainty or maybe the danger of absolutism. Would you say that's an accurate statement of the main integrating idea of Bioshock?
Well, I want to preface it by saying that I'm a limited believer in authorial intent because most people never met me or heard me who played the game. So what I have to say about it doesn't really matter that much. And I think it's really what you make of it. I read all these academic things about Bioshock and stuff, and most of them are compared to what I would thought, are completely out of left field. Like completely out of left field. Some of them are really cool. Some of them you talk about, but all of them are valid because who cares what I think? Honestly, probably.
Now there are lots of different interpretations of Atlas Shrugged. Some of them are completely out of left field, but they're not all valid. That's insane.
You can flip out. Too.
No. Well, it's interesting because I agree. Who cares what you think? But I agree with that because it's not what everybody thinks. It's once you create it, it's objective. It's not open to anybody's interpretation, including yours.
It's not open to anybody's interpretation. That might be a little bit strong, but it still has its nature. It might mean different things to different people in a different context, but it is what it is. It has its identity.
It is what it is.
Well, right. But people encounter it differently, is what I'm saying. I encounter it differently than you do, and whatever its objective form is, does it matter if nobody ever encounters it?
No, but if they do encounter it, it is what it is. And
I don't know, man, because I tell you, it's not, to me, what it was when I wrote it. Like, it changes. In my head, I don't even remember it. Like, exactly what it was. I don't remember exactly all the things I thought when I was making it. It's a long time ago.
I assure you,
it still is what it is. Even if he can't remember it, it is what it is. Even if he goes back to it and it changes in his view, it still is what it is.
You go back, it's the same game, except maybe the texture resolution.
I'm sure the bitmaps.
Now, what book did I read once, and then the next time I read it, it was different? That's happened. Have you done? There's videos, there's movies I watched. I watch it once, and it was just this, but then I go back and watch it again once I understand something. I see it with new eyes. So that happens.
Like the code is the same, but what I don't remember exactly what each moment what I thought when I was writing something or directing something. I could have a completely different memory of what I actually meant at the time.
Right. But
there is the truth. I don't know. I don't know if it exists. For anybody can decipher it. Nobody's got a window to it anymore. If I don't, who does?
I think everybody does. Anybody who just looks at it. It speaks for itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, but you take away something very different than somebody else would take away from it.
Well, I think there's a right way to take things from it and a wrong way.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Say you had vetted a right way to review Bioshock with many of your respected peers, right? And you said, okay, this is the right way, and we're certain that we found the objective truth.
Yeah.
And I looked at it, and I said, and you told me, you called me up on the phone, and you said, Ken, we found the objective truth of Bioshock. And I said, you told me, it's really about, chicken farming practices.
I mean, incidentally, this is what I just did. We're talking right now. I called you up, and I told you what I thought the theme was, so I did do that.
Right, but so your theme, I agree with you that I agree with it. It's a theme. That I believe that's a theme, or certainly the dominant theme. I think that's what I thought it was when I wrote it. But can I tell you for sure? I don't know. Maybe I thought something else. Like maybe
I think that Charles Tew wins that one. So there is a theme to Bioshock. It is what it is. And either people understand it or they don't. And they might take away different things. They might take away a very small bit of it. But the theme is what it is, and I think that Charles Tew won that exchange.
Yeah, I thought I was writing a lot more about objectivism for a while. Maybe I thought I was writing a lot more about something else. I don't really remember, dude. I can't honestly tell you what I thought at the time.
Well, I'm going to use the response you've liked to use so far. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right, because it speaks for itself.
Right.
But what was your chicken example? What were you doing with that?
Yeah, I was saying that you called me up and you said you found the objective truth of the theme of Bioshock, and it's an examination of like chicken farming techniques in Indiana in the 1950s or something.
Right.
And I'd be like, well, I don't know, dude. I'm not sure that's right.
Well, no, I mean,
you're certain of it.
You know that pop philosopher Zizek?
Yeah.
He claims to be a fan of Ayn Rand, and he's written in some journals I regard as disreputable. And I think he says he thinks the Fountainhead is really about how Howard Rourke is a secret lesbian or something. So, I mean...
I think it sounds like he's trolling you, dude.
Oh, he absolutely... I mean, he's just a nihilist.
Why does he... Well, nihilist... It seems to me trolling and nihilism go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah, although it can be done for lighter, funner purposes, but... not
Sure.
in this case.
They don't go hand in hand.
But I mean, that doesn't comport with anything about the objective product. I mean, you can't find any evidence for that in the novel. You can't find any evidence for the chicken farming thing. Now, the most you could say is, you could say, the Concretes of Bioshock express this theme, and this theme has many applications. It covers an infinite number of things in real life, so you could say it applies to real life, this instance of chicken farming or something that's subsumed under the theme of Bioshock. But,
all right. So let me try something less jokey.
mm-hmm.
What if it's about parenthood?
I don't think my answer changes at all.
I mean, it's a story of parents and children, right?
Yeah.
It's all over the place. Alice and Fontaine and Ron, Jack. Sorry, Alice and Jack and Ryan and Jack and Tenenbaum and the Little Sisters and Jack and Little Sisters and the Big Daddies and Little Sisters. It has a lot to do with parenthood, too.
Right, but I mean, there are enough elements in it that you can see that is not the integrating idea behind all the action, all the major elements.
Some days, but was it an accident? Because certainly, I don't know if I intended that, but there it was, over and over and over and over again. That theme coming back. What do you mean? You know, and you can certainly say it's about choice, right? Or the lack of choice. You know, video games. That's another thing you can say it's about. You know, it's a postmodern statement about the video games.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Right. There was some dominant, and if I chose, let's go back and say, let's pretend I don't remember, or let's not pretend. Let's allow for the purpose of debate that I don't remember what the purpose was, right? A theme of the game. Well, the fact that the defining moment of it has nothing really to do with objectivism and ideology, and everything to do with talking about the nature of how we play video games. Is there a good argument you can make that that's what it's really about?
I would say that would just show that it's poorly integrated, that the whole thing doesn't come together with coherence at the end. It goes along in one direction, and at the end it flops over into another direction. So I would say it's just not well integrated, if that's the case.
And again, I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying, but one could. In fact, I read those, doctoral essays on these things, and the truth is, I don't know.
That is,
whatever the essential message is in a piece of work, philosophy, a paragraph, a sentence, or a book, whatever the essential message is, whether or not any given person understands the essential message is up to individual cases. But if somebody read the Declaration of Independence and came back saying this is about welfare for the people, because it has this term in there, then you would say, no, you've missed the point. So there is some point at which you can judge other people and what they're taking away from something, and judge them on what level they're doing it. It's like there are different levels at which you could look at stuff. There aren't 100 different areas this way. It's not like just 100 different things that you could look at it from. It's different levels that you can look at it from. Now you look at Bioshock as a commentary on parenting, possibly. You could look at a lot of things as, if it's a commentary on society, then it's probably a commentary on parenting, and vice versa, in the most abstract philosophical way, if you want to go there. But still, there's some philosophical fundamental message, and either a person can glimpse it and get it, or they can't. It's like Immanuel Kant's writings. If there weren't some fundamental philosophical message objectively really there, then everybody would just interpret his writings different, and there wouldn't be any problem. Everything would just be a mishmash of nothingness. If Ken Levine were right, and it doesn't matter what he puts into it, it just matters what the audience sees, then there's no way to communicate. We can't communicate.
Not auspicious for the next question I'm about to ask, which was...
I feel like I'm disappointing you.
Oh, no.
You're going to go home and you stab your Ken Levine voodoo doll with a pin. Objectivists use voodoo dolls, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Ayn Rand spoke very specifically about voodoo dolls.
Right, that's one of the commandments we must follow. Yeah, I was just going to ask you... I have to admit, I never understood Bioshock Infinite in terms as clear as those in which I understood the first game. It seems to intentionally mislead the player at first into believing that you're going to get the same theme with new concretes. Instead of objectivism, it's going to be something like traditional conservatism, but the danger is the same. certainty, unchanging, strident political beliefs, or deeper than that, beliefs of any kind. But when the multi-dimensional time-shifting element came in, and sorry, I could not figure it out. I have no idea what I think of Infinite. Do you remember what you thought? Because in this case, I am kind of dependent on whatever clues you can give me.
Okay. So Infinite was interesting because I think that when we started it, I think I made a mistake of thinking that I don't think the sort of the world Comstock had built.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of I understood Ryan pretty well,
mm-hmm.
and I got him, and part of me really admired him, and therefore I could write his world in a much broader perspective. I didn't really see much about Comstock to admire, and I think that made that world less interesting in a lot of ways, because I couldn't sort of make a case for him for that world as much. So I became much more interested in Elizabeth's story, and the notion, and Booker's story, and the notion of there's certainly a moral argument you can make against Comstock, because that moral argument is so clear, you know.
Yeah.
He's like, that guy's a bad guy, you know. And we all know there's complicated backstory, I mean, but at the end of the day, you know, there was no nobility in that, in his vision. Where I saw some nobility, a lot of nobility in Ryan's vision, for, you know, a place where people could do things without the interference of others. You know, like I get that because I'm an anti-authoritarian person. I get Comstock's world, so I think as time went on, I wasn't between the combination of the challenges we're having in development and the sort of my struggling with that theme, and was it really as deep a resident a theme? I sort of said, well, you know, what really excites me about this story is Booker and Elizabeth, and the story of Booker's sense, and it really became about Booker's desire to wipe away actions he had done in his life and treat them like they didn't, and make them like they didn't happen. You know, find the girl and wipe away the dead.
Right.
And can we do that? You know, what is our moral responsibility? And I wanted to tell it through I thought Elizabeth was, you know, an interesting character to sort of, and she's really the main character of that story. She's the one who really goes through the changes, and, you know, Booker sort of is much more passive, even though he's the player driving him. It's really Elizabeth who's going through the big transformation in the story until the very end. And I became very interested in that transformation of that character, and part of that was working with the actors too. That I developed this relationship with Troy Baker and Courtney Draper, and I really loved working with them, and we kept developing it. And I think it's, you know, we looked at some of the numbers, sort of, you know, Infinite sold a lot more units than BioShock 1, but it's probably in many ways not as good of a game, I'd say. Some parts of it are great, like as I said, the parts I really fell in love with, you know, I was showing now working, you know, with that storyline, but it had some deficiencies in comparison, I think. And I think that, but it was more popular, which is strange, you know, which is strange. I think part of that is because we tried to, part of me wanted to make something that was, you know, broadly commercial appealing, because I'd never done that in my life. Now that I've done that, that's plenty for me. You know, I'm going back to making weirder things now, right. Because there are sacrifices and compromises you have to make, especially, you know, when you're dealing with this, you know, it's just that it's such a bigger thing to manage. And this is a very long answer. I never really talked about this way before. But yeah, I guess that's the best I can say. It evolved over time, I guess. And if you ask me what it's really about, I'm not even really sure.
So I'm just going to have to, every time I play it, I'm just going to have to try to swim through.
Well, try to say, if you play it again, try to say, like, who's Elizabeth? What's her story? Like what's she saying? Especially if you follow, and if you get a chance, the Barrel C,
Am I wrong that BioShock was a huge hit because it had sort of a central integrated theme? Right? I think that's why it was such a big hit and so talked about, because it's like, it wasn't just a stupid video game with nothing and is empty and nothing. So the second game was probably, people expected something from it. Mr. Tew seems very disappointed. I myself have no idea. I've never played these games. I don't know what's going on here.
It goes back to, you know, Elizabeth ends up in Rapture, and there's an intersection of those two worlds.
Yeah, I played both of those, and I actually I always liked there's a little touch in there where it says Ryan the Lion always shoots to kill, and I like that because it told me how I should play. But it was nice to, you know, be given if you're on this general axis, then this is the way for you. Although I think I got my brother to play it totally stealthily, non-lethal, just because I wanted him to get the trophy, Taffer's Delight, which I don't know why, but that's the funniest thing in the world to me. I think I laughed for 5 minutes the first time.
You know the reference?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, my brother and I always joke about taffy. That is such a funny made-up swear. I assume it's made up.
Yeah, I don't remember if I made that one up or not. We tried to come up with aspects of a language that were different than the real world language. And Bioshock's the same way. Bioshock, the dialogue, especially in Bioshock 1, the dialogue in Bioshock 1, the Splicer dialogue is sort of a pastiche of like guys and dolls theater presentation.
What's that space movie where they made up that new swear word, fracking? You have no fracking clue what's going on here. And then fracking became a real world thing with oil wells. We'd put explosives down oil wells and blow up the rock.
Theater night and film noir.
Yeah. And
then Miller's Crossing and Phil Miller's film. It's a sort of mixture of all those things. And then Ayn Rand, of course. Yes, I think go back and play it. Go back and play it just like you think. If you go back and play it, what is Elizabeth's story and how does she fit into the larger scheme of things? She's the unifying element.
Okay. This probably isn't hard to guess, but I'm a very literal-minded person. So whenever time travel gets involved, or multidimensional stuff, I find it very hard to follow, and I don't really know. Is that an essential element there? Do you think it's necessary to understand exactly?
No, I mean I could explain to you the relevant part in 5 seconds.
Well, if it's that easy, I assume I already got it the first time through, unless I'm just.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of sort of like nuances that are more complex, but the basic story we're trying to tell is about a person who split basically, and one became a person, the other one became another person, and what that meant for his life, for his life, and for the life of his child. But it's all about accepting or denying responsibility.
Do you believe in free will?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, free will in the sense of not any kind of weaselly compatibilist definitions. I mean, you could have done things.
I'm guessing you find almost all, I believe, some degree of weaseliness.
No, absolutely not. If you're a determinist, I mean, you know what Ayn Rand said. Well, you probably don't, but.
What did she say?
There are two sides to every issue. One side's right, one side's wrong. The middle is always evil. So.
She has a Manichean, was it Manichean, right? Manichean view of the universe. Which I do not.
Right.
But I like her. I still like her in a lot of ways. We just have a totally different view of the universe.
I assume that will become less and less.
What?
Your liking of Ayn Rand.
No, my feelings about her haven't changed at all.
Okay.
I think people take themselves I think people take a lot of these things far too seriously. I think honestly, and I'll probably just be I'm probably some kind of cosmic goofball, but because you believe in something. And I unfortunately the older I've gotten, the less I had an experience of
cosmic goofball. Sort of does capture his wily, disintegrated view of things, doesn't it? Anything you say, there's a central principle here. He says, well, maybe other people would disagree. So, nope, can't find a central principle because some people might not agree.
Having grew up in a scenario where I had some very, my parents were kind of tough. They were rough too sometimes, and they demanded a lot of me, and I owe a lot of my success to them. But in the end, there were things they spoke about that, with great conviction, that in the end of their lives, they didn't really have those convictions. It turns out, in the most important ways you can demonstrate a certain type of responsibility and a love and caring for, a person in your life. There were ways that they didn't they weren't the people entirely they said they were. In many ways they were, and as I said, I owe a lot of my success to them. And people are complicated, but as I've gotten older, I find there's less and less I actually think is reliable and believable, and more we're just a bunch of animals, scared animals trying to crawl across the planet without getting eaten. And that's kind of scary. It's kind of. That doesn't mean I don't have values. I don't think things are right or wrong, or that for some reason I feel it's right to act on them.
Without an integrated view of life, the longer you go through life, the more you view it as just a whole bunch of animals crawling around on the planet trying not to get eaten. The less things make sense to you. The longer you go with the view that things aren't sensible, the less sensible things will seem. That seems reasonable.
Things like the golden rule, that old boring rule. But I think it's pretty chaotic out there, and I think if anything, history demonstrates that. Somebody once said we're four square meals away. We're missing 4 square. Sorry, if we miss 4 square meals, we'd be at each other's throats. Civilization is that close to falling apart at all times. And I'm not sure that's not true, and that's scary. But it also makes you have to be an adult and say, Nobody's got the answers for me, man. I just got to do the best I can.
Hmm. Well, as far as taking yourself seriously goes, I just want to say,
How do you do the best you can? No, what he's saying there is, there may be someone who has answers out there, but I'm just going to accept the stuff that I've been given and not worry about it. That's all he said there. There may be answers out there. I don't know. Not sure.
that on my OkCupid profile, I specifically tell people, any woman who has on her profile, I'd like a guy who doesn't take herself seriously. Just avoid me at all costs.
Because yeah, I love that, man. It's very refreshing. At least you're on, like you have a passion. You're honest about it. I like that. I like that about you.
I'm glad. So, free will, in the sense that you could have done otherwise than you did. You believe in that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. That's something, anybody who's at all intellectual today and not religious, it's almost dogma that, I mean, how could you have free will? The world's material, everything has cause and effect, so of course what you do is just determined by preceding events.
I wrote a play once.
Mm-hmm.
You keep going to these minefields of mine. I wrote a play once called House of Creon, which is if you want to talk about taking yourself seriously, I wrote two plays adapting Greek classics to a sort of a modern sensibility. So one was a hodgepodge of stuff. One was an adaptation of Lysistrata. We played Lysistrata, a serious adaptation of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which probably you'll see a little bit of Elizabeth in my Lysistrata, and so they were my two real heroines I ever wrote, I think. And then I wrote a thing called House of Creon, which is sort of a pastiche of a lot of different, the whole Oedipus cycle.
Right.
And there's a speech at the end where Creon realizes that, he's like Oedipus, does all these tragic mistakes, ends up in the shitty, horrible situation like his wife. I can't remember. I wrote a whole play about it. Wife kills herself, lights herself on fire. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly the details, but terrible things happen. And he meets up with, I think it was the ghost of Antigone, who of course he had killed.
Mm-hmm.
And she gives him this speech where she says, and he's like, well, I'm fated. I was fated to do all these and make all these mistakes. The gods cursed me, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, yeah, the gods can fate you to sort of live in this house. There's one house that you don't like, but it's up to you to decide whether you live in the basement or in the sun of it. There's always a range that you have agency over. And so, yeah, there are a lot of things that control us. But I believe that I've seen in life, we have some degree of agency, and some of us have much more, and some of us have much less. There's always some degree of agency, and that doesn't mean it's going to be good enough, but you should always be trying to maximize your agency.
Now, the political system where you can maximize your agency is capitalism, right? And the economic system where you can maximize your agency is capitalism. The political system that allows capitalism to exist is the recognition of individual rights. Individual rights rest on the recognition of man's inviolability as an individual thinking human being. So if you want to maximize what this guy is saying he wants to maximize, then you have to respect the individual's mind and his ability to use reason. So if that's a value to you, then Ayn Rand's philosophy as a whole should be a value to you, Mr. Levine.
I completely agree. I'm surprised to say that.
Look at that.
Have you thought about...
He shouldn't just say that he agrees. He should say, well, then that's inconsistent on your part to want that, but to be indifferent to the things that bring that value about. He thinks it's valuable, then what are the things that would produce that value? Blank out. Nobody knows. Everybody interprets everything differently. This is a D-type to personality.
Why you believe it, or is it just something you think, well, I could be wrong about anything, including this? Or, what do you say sure, I don't know if you've ever talked about this to someone, but if you have, they must tell you that free will is an old-fashioned superstition.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of worrying about it if there's free will, right? So the fact that I worry about it means I think they have free will, that I think about it, because, these means I've chosen that I believe I have free will, because really, if there's no free will, and I'm saying I'm for it, and you're saying you're against it, what does it matter? Because we're both wrong, because we're in that conversation not by choice. So it becomes a bit academic and a bit boring.
And Christopher Hitchens had an excellent reply for that. He said, of course we have free will. We have no choice in the matter.
To even contemplate, because if there is no free will, then the whole conversation is moot.
That's true, but
So why is even having the conversation?
well, because if there is free will, but somebody believes there isn't, that's a big problem. And then they just give up responsibility for their own lives and happiness completely.
Well, it's only a problem if
And they seek to control other people who are not choosing what they're doing. They're doing it in a mechanistic way. And if other people are doing things mechanistically, then you need to go and stop them if they're doing bad things. You don't need to convince them with words or education or anything like that. You just need to physically stop them or destroy them or whatever. So once you take determinism on, you lose respect for people's minds, and you believe that you can only affect them in a physical way because they themselves are not thinking beings. They're just reacting like pinball machines. So you lose respect for them and you start manipulating them as if they're physical things. So determinism's dangerous.
Unless in their person, them personally, it's only a problem for you if they violate the space of their nose, from a libertarian perspective.
Oh, no, I mean...
Yeah, and that's the problem, is they like to violate the space from your nose in, determinists do, because they don't have respect for your mind. They don't think you have a mind. They think you're just an automatic reaction machine.
Look, I care about other people, so...
Right, so you want somebody you love to believe in free will. But let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
What if you're wrong? Then you were sort of the sucker who was forced to make the argument against reality, right?
Yeah, except that's not possible. I'm definitely right. And I mean, I could prove it. I believe God is easily disproven in 5 seconds, although...
What if you're wrong is one of the lamest comebacks to somebody who's proven their point, they've got their case, they believe their thing, and you say, well, what if you're wrong? I mean, it's fine to say to somebody who hasn't proven their case and they're offering a hypothesis, sure, think about the other side. In fact, even if you have proven your case, think about the other side. That's never a problem. Think about what the other side is. But again, showing his D-type personality of nobody can ever know, everybody sees everything different. You think you're right about that? Well, who knows? Maybe you're not right. You've proven it, you've got the evidence. Well, who knows? Maybe you're not right about that. What if you're wrong? Period. Just a slap down of any integration.
Even the most famous atheists can't seem to grasp this because they have very bad philosophical premises. But yeah, I mean...
You mean about not being able to prove a negative?
Well, no, there are two conceptions of God. One is he is just some powerful being that influences us. That is the issue of the arbitrary. That is the issue of not being able to prove a negative. That is just, it's disconnected from reality. There's nothing to think about.
That's a deist view. That's a view that Franklin held and Jefferson.
Kind of, although I think it's slightly different.
Well, they said that God set everything in motion and come back.
Right, but that's less of a statement of his power and his nature than it is his methodology. It's still, I mean, that's Aristotle's prime mover consciousness contemplating itself. I think that's still disproven because it has contradictory elements, but I'm just thinking like a powerful alien or something, that's an arbitrary conception. But when you say God is omniscient, omnipotent, unable by his nature to be grasped by man. He's infinite, he's not bound by time or identity. He can perform miracles, which means violating the law of identity, the nature of reality. There's nothing else you need to know.
You're getting out of the point where you're saying, and his son was in Bethlehem on such and such a year. Like, are you getting that level of detail?
That doesn't even matter.
Okay, so you're saying let's abstract it to a higher level than that even.
Right, that's completely irrelevant. The point is, miracles are impossible by the nature of reality. I'm not uncertain about that. I'm not agnostic. I know they're impossible. Any being that is claimed to exist that can perform them is, by that fact, impossible.
Well, look, certainly, the supernatural is outside of, by definition, is outside of things that we define as natural, right? Now, certainly things that we would call supernatural science fiction become fact eventually. Some do. No, sorry, not all by any imagination, but a proportion do. Like for instance.
So he's going to say something like technology that 1,000 years ago was very advanced would dazzle somebody. Now we understand it. Therefore, God could work miracles without breaking the laws of physics.
For instance, space travel, right, became reality, right? And once it was fiction, now it's reality. So the question is that with a limited understanding of the universe, I think it's fair to say that we don't actually know a lot of things. I think it's fair to say it's no more likely that the God you describe exists than, leprechauns exist.
Is this the appeal to ignorance? Because there was one area in which you didn't understand, and then you came to understand, and now you understand. Therefore, who knows, maybe you don't understand this other thing, which right now you say is impossible. And all of your evidence and all your knowledge of the universe says that this is impossible. But who knows, maybe you'll come to understand. See, it's just, he doesn't have any evidence for it. He's not offering anything. He's not saying, look, this thing that you used to believe, I have evidence that you should change your view. He's not doing that. He's just saying, what if? It's just eternal skepticism. D-type again.
Because there's no evidence supporting either one.
Well, I think
are you for leprechauns? Are you a part of like an objectivist leprechaun?
Well, leprechauns are outside of the scale of probability. Because arbitrary.
So is God.
No. God is on the scale as definitely false. Because a leprechaun is just something arbitrary. You have no evidence for it. There's nothing to talk about. You can't disprove it. Because there's nothing in the nature of reality that means one is impossible as far as we know. But we just have no evidence. But with God, everything you know about reality, the basic fundamental nature of reality, God violates that. So, I mean, it would be just like saying, not that there's a leprechaun somewhere I don't see him, but that he's visible right in front of me. Well, he's not visible right in front of me. That statement is false.
So, while I don't disagree with you, let me disagree with you.
Okay.
So, let's put aside God for a second. Let's talk about reality. You just said he's not consistent. It's he, she, it, whatever is not consistent with right? I don't know. God, I wasn't trying to correct your grammar there.
Yeah.
So your understanding of reality changes all the time. The Newtonian understanding of reality is quite different than the Einsteinian understanding of reality. The if such a thing like many worlds theories is turns out to be true, that's going to be the understanding of reality than the current understanding of reality. And if the 15 things we find beyond that, which we're likely to, I mean, hell, there are microwaves. Where were they for the past 100,000 years? Well, they were there, right? We just didn't know about them.
I should stop you before you go on. There's nothing that has been discovered about reality that has violated the fundamental existence.
Time?
There's two things you can say about existence.
Our perception of time? I completely disagree with you about our perception of time.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
That time is not a river necessarily going in one direction.
Oh, I think it absolutely is. Time is a measurement of motion. To say that it could go in an opposite direction is not to say that you can, walk 10 feet and then walk backwards. It would be the equivalent of saying that you can walk negative distances.
Okay, so I wasn't saying opposite direction. I was saying that it doesn't actually go in a direction. Now you could say entropy implies that, but there is, if there's potential in modern physics, a fair amount of modern physics, that just the very nature of singular flow of time through a singular series of events is not accurate. Now that could also turn out to be wrong, but it could cost me 15 theories away from what's actually the truth.
Well, I don't think it could at all, because you're reifying time here. Time is not some independent thing. Time is a measurement of motion. Nothing is ever going to contradict that.
I think I like to hear Newton say that to Einstein. And I'm not comparing myself to Einstein here. I'm saying the future has a way of surprising you. And I'm not saying I know how it's going to surprise you. In fact, that's my point, is that I don't think you're going to know how the future is going to surprise you. And certainly that's, and look, what is this larger debate about? It's about certainty, right? And versus uncertainty. The people through history have been made fools by time and by the future over and over again.
Well, there's a difference here between figuring out scientific truths, which you can definitely be mistaken on. We don't know everything about them. People might make a mistake today, find out it's wrong tomorrow. Now, I don't think that violates certainty. Even that does. But I'm talking about something even deeper than that. I'm talking about axioms. I hereby guarantee you no one will ever find out, nobody will ever discover scientifically that existence doesn't exist, or that existence doesn't have identity, that a thing isn't what it is. Those are absolutely
I guarantee you someone will figure out.
They did try to find that out in subatomic particles, right? But it has wrecked the whole field, and they can't make any progress because they're saying that things are not what they are. And they're all very confused right now, and they're going to have to go forward using David Bohm's method or something like that. They're not the pilot wave theory or something like that. They're not going to get anywhere until they admit that these things have an identity and cause and effect rules in the subatomic realm. So They always think they have found that final place. In fact, the Higgs boson and entanglement are facts which, it's like the law of identity, or A is A, written everywhere in the universe in a sub-thread through every particle in the universe. That no particle in the universe can be divorced. Anytime you do anything to any particle in the universe, every single other particle knows instantaneously, without any hold up of time. Now, that's the law of identity. That means all things in the universe are connected centrally without without information needing to travel. That's entanglement. And if everything in the universe shares that, that's the law of identity. So they may look for places where A is not A, but we just keep finding more confirmation that A is A. And if you look for where A is not A in subatomic stuff, you find their theories are just an utter mess.
Existence isn't exactly what we think it is. I can pretty much guarantee you, because our understanding of existence is very
But whatever it is, right?
Right, but it may be something very different than what we think it is now.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about.
People say it's a simulation. I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm saying there's lots of people who probably are pretty smart. I've met one of them, who's like the smartest guy I've ever met in my life. He's pretty certain it's a simulation. I'm not saying I agree with him. I'm saying he's not an idiot. So he's probably a person who may debate you on some of these things.
These people who think that the universe is a simulation, holy moly. I mean, they forget that simulations are something that humans have invented. So now I know that they do a probability thing and they say, well, is it more likely that all of this stuff actually is the way it is, or that it's just in a computer game? In the future, if there are computer games with simulations inside of them, there will be trillions of simulations, and so it's really, really unlikely that you're in a real universe. You're almost utterly certainly to be in, because there's one universe, but there's going to be trillions of fake universes being simulated. So you're not in a real universe, you're in a fake universe. How would you believe you're in the real universe? Well, the problem with that is that you're positing simulated universes, for which you have no evidence.
Well, okay.
I want to debate because I'm not smart enough to debate you on the topic. But he could.
I don't think that's... I mean, the idea of the universe as a simulation just violates every epistemological standard possible. So
how dare it?
Yeah.
The nerve of it.
I know.
I would say just start with some evidence. Give me some evidence that this is just a simulation. This is just a simulation.
I'm Charles. I'm super happy for you because you were born apparently at exactly the right time in history, where you've gotten to where all the truths had just.
No. You don't understand what I'm not saying. I know everything about the nature of the universe. You agreed yourself. Whatever the nature of the universe is, that's its nature, right? Even if we don't know it now. Whatever it is, it is.
It's a bit tautological that way, but sure.
No, it's not. It's not tautological. It's not just words. I mean, if you want to call it.
Well, there's a separate question. Can anybody actually see that truth, right?
Yes, it's self-evident.
No, can anyone ever see the truth?
What do you mean?
Well, this is exactly what it's about. So you say there is an objective truth to something, right?
Yeah.
You also say you can see it with 20/20 vision. And I can look at that same truth. I can look at that same thing, and I will see something different. Is that because my vision is bad?
Are you talking about literal perceptual vision?
No. My ability to understand it. My ability to understand the thing. Perceive the thing, understand the thing, rock the thing. Rock it, right? Let's use rock, right? That's the right word. No, you don't like rock?
No, I do not.
Is that a Heinlein Rand fight I didn't know about?
Well, I mean, Heinlein's okay, but...
Okay,
I don't want to get it.
If rock is troublesome, I withdraw it.
Well, I'm just trying to get... Okay, I kind of understand where you're going, but I don't understand concretely what you mean. What would it mean for two people to understand something differently? I don't... Well, for the conceptual truth to be different for two different people.
No, I'm not saying. But so here's the truth, right? Mm-hmm. It is what it is. A is A, right?
Yeah.
You look at it, and you think it's this. You think it's something, right? You think it's X, I think it's Y. Right. I think Y equals A, right? You think X equals A.
Okay.
I can give an example of this. Somebody looks at static electricity, and they see one thing. But Benjamin Franklin looks at it, and he sees a facsimile of a lightning bolt. So, one of them understands the facts better than the other. So it is possible for people to see things differently and to understand them differently. Yes. Now, maybe they could both misunderstand it, right? But in the case I give, one of them understands it better than the other. There are differences in understanding.
How do we know which one of us is right? We agree.
So what's his point then? Because I believe one thing and you believe something different, therefore what? Therefore there's not a truth? That's an insane conclusion. Then neither of us is wrong. Then we're both right. If there's no truth, then both of us are right. But clearly sometimes people disagree about stuff and somebody's right and somebody's wrong. So this is just an insane desire to not think. He wants to renege on the responsibility of thinking. And by having this attitude of always just go, are you sure? How are you sure? Other people have different opinions about that. How are you sure? A long time ago we thought something different. So how do you know? And so anything you propose to him, he's just going to knock it down and say, other people have different opinions and people have believed different things in the past. So how do you know your opinion is not going to change in the future? How do you know your beliefs aren't going to change in the future? Therefore, we can't believe anything. It's an insane view. He's a D-type.
A is A. But my perception of it is my X here is X and yours is Y. How do we know Y was A or X equals A? How do we know which one's right?
You're gonna have to concretize it. I'm not really good with symbols like that. So what would an A be? Give me an A, give me the X, give me the Y. Give me a real example.
So A is the objective truth, right?
What truth? Let's say
any truth.
I thought Mr. Tew was good at dealing with broad abstractions, but he's getting punched around a little bit here.
There is a truth, right? You think there's objective truth, right?
Yeah.
So here it is. Okay. You perceive it, I perceive it, right?
All right.
Whatever, eyes, hearing, whatever it is, we both use our ability to perceive.
Okay. And
I go, aha! I'm gonna describe that truth to you.
Mm-hmm.
What I describe as X, right?
Right.
You say I'm gonna describe that truth to you.
Mm-hmm.
That truth is let's call that Y.
Mm-hmm.
X is not equal Y.
Okay.
That's happened many times, right? Somebody's come down from the mountain, I said I saw this, and somebody else comes down from the mountain, I said I saw that. So
right.
If we have a different description of A,
mm-hmm.
how do we know who's right?
Well, we would have to look at it in a particular case, and then you would have to judge for yourself whether you agreed with Benjamin Franklin or this other guy about whether static electricity was or was not similar to lightning bolts.
It entirely depends on what you're talking about. Are you talking? I mean, again, if you mean what you literally saw, that's a completely different thing. But if
what I took away is what.
See, the ability to deal with broad abstractions means to know when you need to concretize, to know when you need to bring an example, and in fact, you need to at every step. Or else you're dealing with. If you're not dealing with reality, then what are you dealing with? That's why you need to concretize. So here we are. Mr. Tew is asking him, "What's an example? Give me an example in the real world so we can analyze what you mean." That's why I bring the example of Benjamin Franklin with the lightning.
What I describe it as, right? So like the thing exists, but until we put it into the world, give me what you believe to be an objective truth.
There's a bottle of wine sitting on this table right in front of me.
Now, what if I looked at it and I thought, is it a bottle of green wine? Let's say it's a green bottle of wine, right?
The bottle is green?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that an objective truth? The bottle is green?
Yeah, it is.
All right. So I look at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll start with a nuance of it. I say, well, the bottle is green.
Uh-huh.
We both agree that. But in reality, and there's some science to support this, what you see as green is actually quite different than what I see and identify as green. And we're actually taking in different things.
Okay.
You don't understand what I'm talking about. You know the science I'm talking about?
Oh, I totally understand.
So what is it? Do we share the same green? And this is not even getting to the larger point I was making before. This is more of a wrinkle on that.
Yeah, I mean,
what's green?
It is both in a different context. I mean, it isn't intrinsically green. It appears green to somebody with your ocular equipment, and it appears yellow to the person with a different physical seeing apparatus. There's no intrinsic truth of it, but it's objective, because you're not saying what is it in itself. You're saying what does it look like means what does it look like to someone. There's no what does it look like in general.
Right, but how do we know once we get down to that level of specific? So let's now say it's a piece of philosophy, right? You hear it, I hear it. It's all in the it's in language. Somebody says it, and I say, you know what? I think that means I know that means this, right? Like Congress shall make no law regarding the establishment of religion, right? I hear that, and it's very clear to me what that means. You hear that. I'm not saying we actually have a difference of opinion on this topic, but just for argument's sake.
Right.
You think it means something quite different. We both hearing the same words. We both think there's an objective truth there, right?
Right.
So, but our views are different. How do you explain that?
Because someone is lacking the appropriate context. Somebody doesn't understand English or doesn't understand how English was used in that time.
Now, what does Mr. Levin promise or propose here? He proposes that because we have a disagreement about it, therefore it doesn't have a meaning? Therefore there isn't a meaning to it? I mean, that would be a strange thing for him to propose, wouldn't it? Clearly there is some meaning that it has, and the closer a person is to the meaning, the more they'll get from it. If it's a piece of objective truth, a scientific truth, then the closer you are to the meaning, the closer you'll be to reality. So, and that's what meaning really means, doesn't it? It means to be close to reality. If something is meaningful, that means that it speaks to reality. If something's meaningless, that means it's arbitrary, it's dismissible, it's no good, it's useless. So if something has meaning, it does speak to reality.
Conceptualized enough to understand what a certain concept covers, it doesn't.
Right.
So if something has different meanings to different people, all that's saying is that one of them knows more about or senses more about or sees more about the reality of the meaning than the other person. That's all that would mean in an actual like with Benjamin Franklin. If somebody disagrees with him about the similarities between static electricity and lightning bolts, they are wrong.
Well, let's step back further. Let's say you could go, this is what happens is, in law sometimes, so it's not as valuable as the contract itself. So the contract here is very vague, right? I would think it's probably less vague than some other people in terms of that I could probably, like you, could talk about what an established religion is, right? It doesn't mean, it was a state, each state had an established religion in the colonial times. And so they were trying to fight back against that, I think it was Georgia's Catholic, and, and Connecticut was something else, and Rhode Island was started by a bunch of separatists who fled the Massachusetts Bay Colony. But let's say we both had, sort of a shared understanding of what an establishment meant. We sort of cleared up all those sort of, we cleared up all those factors. It's still pretty vague. And if you go back and you read different people who wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it'd be hard to interpret sometimes what their view of it was. Madison said, "Oh, the reason we didn't include the mention of God was because we forgot." And what he meant was just sort of a joke, saying, in my interpretation was, and he didn't say exactly those words, I'm paraphrasing, is that it was so irrelevant to the conversation that it didn't even come up for them. And why somebody else can read that and say, well, it means that they were very busy and they meant to come back and put a whole bunch about Jesus in there. We'd have different opinions of that law, wouldn't we?
Maybe, but we don't have to, and there's a right opinion. I mean, this is no different from if somebody scribbles a random marking on a page and says, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. Or it means all of the interpretations at once and none of them, in the sense that it simply represents that different people wrote it down without understanding what they were writing.
So what do you think? What do you think of the constitutional interpretations of, say, Congress make no law abridging the right of free speech, or whatever? I'm paraphrasing again. But what would you make in terms of the additions that have been added to that law in terms of things like fighting words or pornography and things like that? Do you think those are people actually interpreting the objective truth of that law, or do you think that they were misreading it?
I think they were misreading it.
Okay. So you call yourself an originalist?
No, I would not.
Actually, you misreading it. What?
If you are interested in this, which may not be the case.
Look at the fact that after the 1972 or 74 censorship ruling in the Supreme Court that we can censor offensive language or words or pictures, that offensive is now the go-to criteria. And from that, we get hate speech. So now we've got hate speech laws, thanks to, originally, the censorship of pornography.
Case, but there is there's an objectivist legal scholar called Dr. Tara Smith, and she has a whole book on originalism and interpretation of the Constitution and legal documents, if you care about that. But
no, I'm interested. Like, it's an interesting topic because it's I don't think people realize how unfortunate. Well, I don't know if it's fortunate or intentional.
Mm-hmm.
How sketchily outlined the Bill of Rights is always struck me as just terrifyingly vague. But you could go back and make an argument, and I'm not saying I believe this argument, that they intended it to be terrifyingly vague because they didn't want it to be overly structured so it could be a living document. Who knows?
Well, I don't think that's the alternative.
Are they lazy? And I'm not even saying I believe what I just said.
I don't know why he says it's terrifyingly vague. I would need some examples. Because I thought it was pretty thorough. And he filled and plugged more holes. Even the 9th and 10th Amendments tagged on at the end there filled and plugs holes that we still don't really understand what they were filling and plugging.
I'm just saying it is weird that it's so vague.
Maybe, although I'm not sure they intended it to be vague. I don't know.
I mean, Jesus, when those guys want to write, we intend these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created, they will go on forever, and that's great, right? They said some beautiful things.
Yeah.
But the Bill of Rights is like, no, Congress will make no laws.
Well, I mean,
that's it. You know, the Second Amendment, right?
Right.
Very brief, very open to a lot of different interpretation. Not, if you really didn't want to write a document that wasn't open to interpretation, that's probably not the document you would have written.
Well, no. I mean, you cannot. Well, that's the whole thing with the Interstate Commerce Clause. You cannot write something that just compels people to understand what you meant. If somebody wants to misinterpret something, they can do it. I mean, they now regulate intrastate commerce on the grounds of the Interstate Commerce Clause because it affects economic demand in other states. If you can get there from there, you can get anywhere from anywhere.
You're not going to find a debate from me on the overextension of interstate commerce laws and crackdown on freedoms as such. But that said, you know, but there's also federalist versus, states, argument to be made there as well. And people probably here don't understand what a confederation of states it was at the beginning, right. and the whole struggle between Hamilton and Jefferson for the musical, what that meant, and the whole notion of early republicanism, which is very different from current republicanism. Well, in some ways not. But people don't really understand what confederation of states it was. That it wasn't really a country at the beginning.
Well, I mean, that's my point. If you go back and look at that context, it becomes clear what that Interstate Commerce Clause was supposed to mean. This is a popular view among objectivists to say that the Interstate Commerce Clause was a mistake in the Constitution, but I don't think it was. It had an objective and valid meaning and legitimate purpose, but you can misinterpret anything, so that's...
Yeah, if you read the history of the early...
I do wonder what it was that he thinks was valid. I think it was just a misunderstanding by the Founding Fathers of they put the word regulation, and regulation meant to make things regular so that things weren't chaotic. And it was just a misunderstanding on their part. They didn't realize that random behavior by multitudes of individuals leads to organized behavior. They didn't understand that.
The United States, originally it had no power to tax.
Right.
It really couldn't do anything. And what happened is they started having all these... they couldn't pay the soldiers, from the war, and they started getting all these rebellions on their hands because they owed the people money, and nobody wanted to pay for the war. And so they started taxing people, and they did it because there was going to be another revolution, and I'm sure you know all this. But people don't. And so, yes, so people are missing that context. But I think we share the context, you and I. So I think we share the context. I'm not sure I agree with you that the Constitution wasn't overly vague, even given the context, because those people are also smart enough to know that people forget context.
Yeah, but even if you wanted to, it's an impossible assignment to specify everything. You don't know what's going to come, so you can't do it.
Right, but they could very specifically call out what they want to say. Like the Declaration is a great example, as a very comprehensively written statement, a message to King George. It's the Declaration of Independence. Hey, fuck you, King George. We're breaking off from you. And reality, where they really could have said is, hey, George, sayonara, and that would have been enough, right? But they went on for pages and pages about it. They did not have the First Amendment, the Bill of Rights, or Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and brevity is the solar wit notion about them. So they really gave it to old George in that document.
Yeah, but that's...
Not to be specific, they could be specific. And I'm not sure why they were really that incredibly vague.
Well, I think it's clear.
Yes, it was wisdom, to some degree wisdom on their part.
Yeah, all the enumerated grievances against King George the Third, where that was a specific instance. That was the catalyst for the break. So it was fine to enumerate it, but when you're laying down a Bill of Rights or Constitution, the principles have to be broad. It's not vague. It's broad because they're going to cover things as long as the country exists.
Yeah, but you know what's funny?
Mm-hmm.
That how much the Bill of Rights and the Constitution line up to the Declaration, because what they were basically trying to do with the Bill of Rights, with the Constitution, was saying, let's make sure what happened with King George never happens again, right? Mm-hmm. That's why you want a well-armed militia, right? Because then we can debate about the meanings of beyond that. Let's just not even get a debate whether it means anything beyond the militia, but just say certainly you want at least a well-armed militia, because that's what kicked those fuckers out of Boston the first time, right? And we want freedom of speech because we use the press and freedom of the press to spread our message about George. Freedom of assembly. We want freedom of assembly because we remember what happened to the Boston Massacre. It was just a revolution over and over again. Mm-hmm. Because that's what you do when you just had a bad problem. You say, let's make sure that never happens again. And that's your entire focus. You're fighting yesterday's battle. And that's what the Constitution was in a lot of ways. They were refighting the revolution and making sure they never got in that spot again. And when you compare it sort of the beat by beat of what happened in the revolution and the Constitution, you walk away kind of stunned at how specific it was to the problem they had just gone through.
Yeah, but I don't think it was that parochial.
I don't think it was that specific to the problem they had just gone through. They studied ancient Greek and Roman law in order to, to work through some of these details in the Constitution. I did not think it was a specific response to the thing at the time. I think Ken Levine is a little uninformed about the history of how the Founding Fathers came to their conclusions. They did a lot of real work to get there.
I think it was much more... I believe in the power of philosophy, so I think this was much more... they were men of action. They weren't really intellectuals themselves, the Founding Fathers, they were just putting into...
Jefferson? They were just pranced around the mansion, writing shit and studying plans. He's a fucking intellectual.
Yeah. I meant they were...
Adams, was a lawyer.
Right, but they were more narrowly political. They were not original philosophical thinkers. But they were putting into practice the ideas of, ultimately Aristotle through John Locke. But
but they were the first people really to do it in real time in a real government. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. All that's great is philosophy. They were able to take that philosophy and build, especially the division of powers. In
right,
government.
That's their contribution.
Yes, and that's brilliant. That's
right.
It's brilliant.
Yes,
and that didn't spring out of their head like Athena popping out of Zeus. Mm-hmm. They worked that problem. The Federalist Papers, right?
Yes.
So he knows about the Federalist Papers, and he thinks that this was just an expedient response to this problem of the time, and they were just fighting like you always prepare for the war you just fought. That's all it was. But then he knows about the Federalist Papers. Well, he must not know much about the Federalist Papers then. See, he's a D-type. He's just going to knock down any generalization. He said, no. America wasn't that big of a thing. It was just a response to the last war they fought. That's all it was.
But I don't think they would have been able to come up with, or been motivated to come up with their solution. They needed the soil to grow those ideas.
Yeah, I understand. It wasn't just a reaction to the revolution, but it's funny when you look at it from that perspective, how that a lot of it, that it seems less purely sprung out of philosophy than I originally thought it did. But I thought it was purely a product of the Enlightenment until I sort of really dug into the history of the period and realized there was a lot of connection between what had happened over the past 10 years. And I think there's not a lot of people who don't, their lives aren't heavily influenced by a traumatic 10-year event they went through. And think how traumatic it was. You think about the unrest in the country now. You're in America?
Yes, yeah, I'm in Georgia.
Yes. And so, whatever degree, people feel it differently, but everybody feels a sense of unrest, and they wish it would sort of, everybody wish that it wasn't as tense. Can you imagine what it's like during a revolution? Mm-hmm. That's traumatic. Of course you're going to react to that.
Yeah, although you could say the revolution was...
Why did the Founding Fathers create America? Because they went through such trauma. It was so traumatic. How many other societies have had trauma, and they didn't produce the United States of America out of their trauma?
Caused by the ideas that ultimately led to the rest. So it's not like the revolution was something that happened to them.
Well, Yes, but I'm telling you, when you unleash, the whirlwind,
Mm-hmm.
I think nobody knows where it goes, and nobody knows what that's going to be like. Nobody expects the carnage, and very rarely have things turned out to be as smooth as people thought. I mean, Adams, what happened to Boston? Adams saw terrible things, happening in Boston. It was probably, that city was under siege for months and months and months. Can you imagine being a city under siege by what seemed by a foreign power?
Happened in Stalingrad. Why didn't they produce the United States of America? They went under a terrible siege. And where else? Leningrad also, yeah. They didn't produce terrible, terrible siege. They didn't produce the United States of America.
For months, how traumatic that must be. People getting arrested, and you don't know. Like now, we're worried about posting on Facebook something politically unpopular. It's going to get people yell at us. A lot worse can happen to you back then if you say the wrong thing around the wrong group of people. You're Tory, you're a little too Tory, or a little too patriot. You're going to get in big trouble.
Yeah.
Therefore, because it was a traumatic society, therefore they came through it by building this amazing thing we call the Constitution. So trauma produced the Constitution. Really? Weak sauce. Weak sauce.
That's traumatic.
Yeah.
Dude, I saw how traumatized you get talking about politics. Like, you're a passionate guy. You would be. I want to see you after 10 years of that. Like, if there was like a revolutionary war between the objectivists and the somebody else, you'd be traumatized at the end of that, man. I feel bad for you. I'd be like, that dude had been through a lot.
Yeah.
I don't care how philosophically sound you are. You'd be upset.
I mean, philosophy doesn't mean you don't give up your emotions when you become.
Poor George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, they were upset.
That's philosophy.
And you'd be changed, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so, but it wouldn't change my fundamental outlook, I don't think. Unless...
You don't think. You don't know. You don't think.
Well, I don't think because I have free will, so I can always... But I know it's possible for it not to change if I decided to go that way. So I guess we're a long way off from the existence of God here. But my point... Well, I already said what I thought about that, so...
Should we throw a note to the people who want to hear about the game?
You
want to keep talking about? I'm happy to do either one.
No, we can go back to that.
I'm happy either way. I just where I'm bored when I start talking about John Locke, which I will talk about forever, right?
Yeah.
Obviously. I wonder if we're reaching the bleachers.
I don't know. This podcast is primarily philosophical, but anytime I have wiggle room, I go to video games. So whatever we do within these things, that's fine.
I'm having a good time. So.
All right, we're gonna pause there, and I'm gonna finish this in the next video. Thank you for joining me. Please go to Patreon and support my channel.